There's just so much.
You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on. Hello, it's Jessie here. As you know, we here at Cancelled are the patron saints of lazy girls. We like not doing anything. And after a year of hard work, we've decided that we're going to take a little break and not record anything for a little while. But we didn't want to leave you high and dry with no Cancelled in your life because we also care about you, our fellow lazy girls. So for the next few weeks, we're going to drop some of our all-time favourite episodes back into your feed. Now, there's some from ages ago that you've probably missed that are still completely relevant because these people are still very cancelled. We thought you would enjoy. We will be back working not too hard, but slightly more in the new year. Hello and welcome to Cancelled. I am Claire Stevens, and on this podcast, I tell the story of a celebrity or a TV show's cancellation from beginning to end. Now, who are you? I'm Jessie Stevens, and fun fact, not been well this week, but I had to come in today, and that is adjacently relevant to today's episode because the man on trial, he would sit me down and say something like, "We teach people how to treat us." Okay. And then he would say that it's my fault, and then he would yell at me to get better. Okay, that's not that helpful to your physical health, but that's all right. We'll get into that. This podcast is about how some celebrity crimes are worse than others, and ultimately, it's about justice. So, Jessie, you might be wondering, who's on trial today? Yeah, I absolutely have no idea. It's Dr. Phil.
Coming up. Let's do it. I want you to get excited about your life.
Here we go, in 10.
Stand by, camera 6. If it's happening now, we're going to deal with it now.
Stand by, Dr. Phil.
This is going to be a changing day in your life. I'm taking people with real problems and moving them into the Dr. Phil house.
Philip Calvin McGraw. Okay. He sounds like a country music star. Because he is. He was introduced as Dr. Phil by Oprah Winfrey on her show in 1998.
My God, I've talked to every psychologist known to womankind, psychiatrists, therapists, people talking to the inner child and their inner puppies. And I haven't seen anybody better than Phil at human functioning assessment. And I could feel this when because he'd never done TV before. I really discovered him and have created this.
The Dr. Phil show officially started in 2002. You might wonder how Oprah and Dr. Phil came to know each other. Well, Oprah started working professionally with Dr. Phil in 1995 when Texas cattle ranchers sued her for libel. And she hired Dr. Phil's legal consulting firm, a firm that he co-founded, that offered help with litigation psychology and trial consulting and that sort of thing. And she won her case and she made a friend. It was Dr. Phil. That is such a tangential link. They're friends now. It launched his career. He makes $90 million a year. What a friend to make. A lot of people like to say he's not a real psychologist. I did want to ask that question because the show's called Dr. Phil, so it would seem he is, you know. He holds a doctorate in psychology. Is he a physician? No. Is he a doctor? Yeah, he's a doctor of psychology. Wait. If you complete a PhD in history, you can be a doctor of history. Correct. Is that what we're talking about here?
Yes.
He's a doctor of psychology, not like a... So if I have an issue in the US, I'm in Texas, and I have an addiction issue, I wouldn't go to Dr. Phil. Well, no. Because while he holds a doctorate in psychology, he stopped renewing his license in 2006. So he's got a PhD in psychology. Separately, he's a clinical psychologist, but he stopped renewing his license and he has never held a valid license in California where the show is filmed. When asked, why don't you have a current license to practice psychology, his answer is, I don't practice psychology on the Dr. Phil show. No, he doesn't. No, he does. He says, I don't currently practice psychology. But you do, sir. Every weekday. No, he yells things at people and has some fun sayings. So he does not practice psychology on that show. However, while that is more legit than I thought, this is important to note. His dissertation was on rheumatoid arthritis. Jessie, I studied psychology, so you know that by studying psychology, it does not mean that you're an expert in addiction. No. He did his work in rheumatoid arthritis, and then he did his postdoctoral training in forensic psychology. So Dr. Phil doing his show is a bit like a cardiologist doing a TV show where they give advice on people's skin conditions.
It's unrelated.
It's unrelated.
That explains a lot of the advice.
It does, doesn't it?
I thought before coming in here, because I did know again it was going to be Dr. Phil, some of my favourite Dr. Phil lines. Well, now you've asked Claire, I'll tell you. You have to name it before you can claim it. Which brings me to Dr. Phil likes a rhyme.
He does.
That's not a rhyme because it's just the same word repeated. But he likes it when it sounds nice. And it's in his Texan drawl.
Yeah.
I've got another one. You cannot change what you do not acknowledge.
So helpful.
Dr. Phil. This is my favourite one, and I always think it. Anger is nothing more than an outward expression of hurt, fear, and frustration.
I think that a lot when I'm angry. I think, what am I feeling? What am I feeling? I'm hurt. I'm embarrassed.
Yes,
I'm
I feel
embarrassed
shame.
and I'm angry.
That's what Dr. Phil would tell me. Like that time that I threw a shoe at you.
Yeah.
When we were teenagers and then I started crying because I worried that I actually hurt you. Dr. Phil would intervene. He'd say, you feel ashamed.
Exactly. My structure is as follows. Number 1, exploiting vulnerable people. It's mostly what his show's about. Number 2, toxic workplace claims. He's in a bit of trouble. Number 3, other creations. Because Dr. Phil, he's not just Dr. Phil, he's got some other things that he does.
I don't know how he has time.
Jesse, last year an article in BuzzFeed described Dr. Phil as Jerry Springer in a better suit. Oh. It's not nice.
Do they do lie detector tests on Dr. Phil? Have you ever seen a lie detector test?
Look, not that I can think of. I wouldn't put it past him. I'd say that'd be a great tool. But that's more Maury.
Yeah, that Maury Povich.
The article headlined, "It's time to cancel Dr. Phil," argued that the daytime TV show exploits vulnerable people who come on the show for help. Jesse, I just want to quickly go through some episode titles to kind of show what we're working with in terms of the exploitation of vulnerable people. Young, Possessed, and In Love. I believe I am being electronically harassed and tricked into seeing aliens! Exclamation mark.
So as a producer, I'm just going to let some people in on some of the ideas behind that. What we focus on here at the Dr. Philip Show is surprise and delight. And it is surprise and delight when you throw Possessed in there for that first one.
Yep.
Did you just say aliens? That was some of my best work.
I am not mentally ill, but I am the reincarnation of Pocahontas.
Okay, that feels racist. Also, at Dr. Phil, we have a saying that we often don't say outside of the four walls because it's problematic. Mm-hmm. Dr. Phil is a freak show, okay? We find very strange people who cannot be helped. It's like a circus, an old school 19th century circus where you put like the tallest man and everyone laughs at them.
Relatedly, we're alcoholics, but we're great parents. I don't believe you. And my nephew is a liar who wants to be a rapper and claims to have been offered $1 million record deal. I have a couple of thoughts on that one. 1, title too long. 2, not relatable.
No. And the other problem with that title is that there isn't enough tension. Like in the Possessed one, I feel as though there's a real point of tension where it's like, ooh, will they become unpossessed? Yeah. Whereas that one, it's just more of like statement of fact.
It is. And look, Dr. Phil does cover some important areas. I'll give you that, Mrs. Producer. He got an interview with Gabby Petito's parents. He did an episode on Columbine. He had an exclusive interview with Sinead O'Connor. He interviewed John Benet Ramsey's brother Burke, who hadn't spoken for 20 years, and everybody was pretty convinced he'd killed his sister.
Yeah, you're not allowed to say this, but like Burke did it, didn't he? Burke didn't definitely not do it.
Burke, yes.
I love when Dr. Phil wades into true crime.
Me too. It's very unexpected.
It is a show that at times doesn't know what it is.
Okay, so let's look at a few examples of where Philip has specifically done some exploitation.
We call him Philip when he's in trouble.
Yeah. Todd Herzog, he won Survivor in 2007, and in 2013 he came on the Dr. Phil show because he had developed some problems with alcohol. What we see is a man who needs to be carried on the set because he can't walk on his own. He's confused and disoriented and upset.
That's a man who needs real psychological help. Why is he on the Dr. Phil show?
Oh, no. Dr. Phil says on the episode, "I've never talked to a guest who was closer to death." Audiences, though, didn't see the setup of Herzog's appearance. And he actually claims there was this big investigation in 2017, and he claims that he was not intoxicated when he arrived at the studio, but then he went to his dressing room, there was a bottle of Smirnoff vodka, and he drank all of it. Then someone at the show said, you're looking a bit on edge. Let's give you a Xanax to calm you down.
That was my friend Betty.
Yeah. So he says what you saw when I came on stage was the result of that.
So, in the way of explanation, what we needed was for him to have a breakdown on set. And it is really difficult when someone is having an acute mental health episode to go, we need you to not lose it before or afterwards. It needs to be during. And so that's what we did. We helped him to have that moment so that everyone could see, because this show is about helping people.
Okay. He doesn't really think that it helped him that much. And the other problem is that he says when he arrived in LA for the show, you'd know when you're an alcoholic and you're detoxing, it's really dangerous. You can die from detoxing without medical supervision. When the show was kind of challenged about that, they had a few conflicting statements. They said, yeah, he was medically supervised. Then they said, not everyone's medically supervised. Then somebody said, in terms of providing supervision to vulnerable guests, no, of course not. It's a television show.
Yeah, we don't even have a real doctor. Take the man to the doctor. You know, do you have arthritis? He can help you.
Rheumatoid arthritis, because Dr. Phil can give you some outdated advice on that. He has not looked at it since the 80s, but he could provide you some guidance.
Yeah, well, go to your GP, but Dr. Philip doesn't know what he's doing.
Then we've got Danielle Bregoli. So this was an episode called I Want to Give Up My Car-Stealing, Knife-Wielding, Twerking 13-year-old Daughter Who Tried to Frame Me for a Crime.
Okay, so as a producer, surprise and delight, because that twisted.
Yep.
It twisted at the point of twerking.
Yeah.
Okay, so knife wielding, yeah. But then when it became, read those last few words again.
Twerking,
Yep.
13-year-old daughter who tried to frame me for a crime.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is a surprise. That's a twist.
It was 2016 and Danielle Bregoli is now better known by her rapper name Bad Baby. She is also known as the Cash Me Outside, How About That?
Cash me outside, how about that?
Catch me outside, how about that?
Huh?
Catch me outside, how about that?
Catch you outside? What does that mean?
What I just said.
Now, Dr. Phil loved a troublesome teenage girl. It was his niche. He loved yelling at them. They're entitled. He's an older man.
And that's what his rheumatoid arthritis research showed him, was that if you yell in the face of someone who is mentally ill,
Yeah.
often they get better. And that's the premise of the show, is that like all psychological episodes, what you'll find is that you're not good at the beginning of the hour. You get yelled at by a middle-aged Texan man, and by the end, you're cured. You're
Yes.
actually better. And that is the principle of psychological help. Ask
Well,
Freud.
That's exactly what didn't happen here. So just to reiterate, Danielle was 13. Her mum, Barbara, and when we talk about people we cancel along the way, let's cancel Barbara, Babs. She decided to take her teenage daughter to Dr. Phil because the show would often feature rebellious teenagers. After sitting down with Danielle and her mum, Dr. Phil suggested the reason for the young girl's behaviour might be that her mum had cancer twice and she was estranged from her father. Maybe that didn't need to happen on television. Maybe it's an insight into why she's acting like this.
Maybe the reason that she's behaving like that is because she has the type of mother who would take her onto the Dr. Phil show.
Exactly. And when you're 13, you just don't have a lot of agency in whether you go on the show.
No.
Dr. Phil talked to her about how she was stealing cars, why she was acting out at home, and why she was speaking with that accent. She said she adopted it from the streets. Then when the audience laughed, she challenged them to fight her outside.
And all these hoes laughing like something funny.
She's talking about the audience, that they're laughing at her.
Did you say the hoes are laughing?
Yep,
So the audience are a bunch of hoes.
yep. Catch me outside, how about that?
It's almost like she knows she's a spectacle.
I know. And so she went completely viral. She also threatened to fight her mother while on the show. She stands up and he's like, you take it. Oh, you want to take me? And her mum's like, please sit down. This is embarrassing for us as a family. Dr. Phil does say at one point, she's not the Antichrist. That's a direct quote. And I'm like, well, that's lovely.
He's a religious man, so if she was, he'd say it.
But at the end of the episode, she is transported to Turnabout Ranch. Now, Turnabout Ranch is where all the troubled teenagers go. There are horses. I'm not sure what else happens at Turnabout Ranch, except that there's horses and that the girls ride them sometimes and apparently get some form of therapy.
Is it like Dr. Phil's personal...
Not
camp?
he refers them there.
Okay.
Right? But in 2021, Bregoli came forward about the abuse she experienced and witnessed at the Turnabout Ranch in the 6 months she was there. She was inspired to do so after another young woman named Hannah, who was also on the Dr. Phil show and went to Turnabout Ranch, said she was sexually assaulted by a staff member when she was there. Danielle demanded an apology from Dr. Phil to herself and Hannah and all the other kids he had sent there. When speaking about her own experience, she said kids experience mistreatment from the staff, they're malnourished, they experience mental and physical abuse, and she says that when she was there, she witnessed a person who was there murder a staff member. And that actually did happen. He was stealing a car, and then one of the staff members intervened, and he stabbed the staff member to death. There was no therapy or support for darling 13-year-old Danielle. Cash me outside, how about that? When she witnessed that.
Dr. Philip needs to be more accountable.
And then
to
he
where
was
he
like,
sends these young people.
And then he was like, I don't have any affiliation. I just send people there. And Cash Me Outside Girl was like, well, you send a lot of people there, including me and Hannah. And it's not
And then
very
we
nice.
witnessed a traumatic event.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's Dr. Phil not being that great. Shelley Duvall. She was an actress, and in 2016 she was 66. She was best known for playing Jack Nicholson's wife in The Shining and starring opposite Robin Williams in Popeye. When she appeared on Dr. Phil, it was clear she was really mentally unwell.
Friday on an all-new Dr. Phil. The Shining's Shelley Duvall, from red carpet to near recluse.
I loved Robin Williams. I don't think he's dead.
Where do you think he is?
Shape-shifting.
She said Robin Williams was alive and shape-shifting and that hornets had attacked her spinal cord. She asked Dr. Phil if he was a policeman or an investigator, and he said, no, I'm a doctor. And then she said, with his own TV show, and actually really good point. Really good point.
And he lied. And this is the thing. It's like, she's not crazy.
No.
She was looking at him going,
You're not a doctor.
You're-
I've looked at your credentials.
no.
She said she was being threatened by a sheriff, and it was just really, really upsetting
So it's
to watch.
someone in the middle of a psychotic episode.
Correct.
So in terms of top 3 places you don't want to be,
Probably national television.
international television.
Yeah, 6 million viewers probably isn't what you want. Mia Farrow tweeted, Dr. Phil, it's upsetting and unethical to exploit beloved Shelley Duvall at this vulnerable time in her life. Do not air that show. And Duvall later said, I found out the kind of person he is the hard way. My mother didn't like him either, and basically said Dr. Phil would not leave her alone and kept trying to get her to come back on the show, kept trying to get her help, and she was like, leave me alone. I think it was a bad choice for me to come on your show.
In the first place.
Yes. Now, finally, we have a guest who was instructed on where to get heroin. By a
I've
producer.
heard this rumour.
Yeah.
Can you explain?
In 2012, a young woman named Jordan appeared on the show, and her auntie, Marianne Smith, was the one who had contacted the show to get her on. And so she arrives in LA, and Jordan starts going through withdrawal from heroin. They were concerned for her well-being. Her auntie goes to one of the producers, and the producer says, it's okay. She can get some heroin from Skid Row.
What? How did the producer even know that?
I don't know. I think they probably had to do it before.
Just as another issue, the thing about psychologists is that often they specialise, right? So,
Dr. Phil specialises in
in
everything.
rheumatoid arthritis. But then you've got eating disorders, depression, anxiety, child psychology, blah, blah, blah. To have a generalist
Yeah.
who has no expertise in anything, in fact, be like, I'm going to deal with heroin addiction on the same day.
Yes.
I deal with a woman who believes she is possessed.
Yeah.
No one has that breadth.
Dr. Phil does.
No.
Makes for a great show.
Because he says the same thing to all of them. I'll tell you what he says. Let's see. You cannot change what you do not acknowledge.
Okay.
And then he shuffles them off the stage.
Yeah.
Go on backstage. There's some heroin. So,
I now want to move on to the toxic workplace allegations. Jessie, there is precedent for toxic workplaces in the cancel courtroom. We've talked about Ellen. Now it's time to talk about Dr. Phil. In early February of this year, BuzzFeed published a report where they had spoken to 12 current and former Dr. Phil Show employees who said they experienced verbal abuse and that the workplace fosters fear, intimidation, and racism. 7 of those employees also said that guests, who are often vulnerable, are manipulated and treated unethically. I think you only have to watch the show to know that.
Yeah, agree.
Despite working on a TV show that's about mental health, 11 of the 12 employees said that their own mental health was damaged at the expense of working on the show. None of the employees say that Dr. Phil himself is doing the naughty things. They specifically refer to the executive producer, but they did say, how can he not know? 7 employees said they were encouraged to perpetuate racist stereotypes on screen, to say they experienced racism. 1 employee said they were instructed to make sure a guest didn't take their prescribed medication. 5 employees said that people behind the scenes would mock the guests who were on the show. I mean, they're mocked on stage.
Well, they're mocked in a title.
They are. So it's totally unsurprising they're mocked backstage. Some past employees said that they were told to basically do whatever it took to get a booking, and that they also had to ask questions about mental health and sexual history that they did not feel trained to ask. And one former employee said, we walk this really weird tightrope of booking people whose stories are just juicy enough for TV without being straight up illegal. That really sums it up.
Do you remember on the show they used to have, like, they'd do a big thing about, I don't know, my boyfriend's a narcissist.
Yeah.
And there's a ghost in my toilet, but my boyfriend is a narcissist. And then they'd have the slideshow where Dr. Phil would walk over to his slide that someone had made on Google Slides, and it was like signs of being a narcissist.
And it was literally a PowerPoint from
Wikipedia.
Psychology 101.
Yeah. It was like self-involved. Furthermore, the slideshow is one thing. The second thing, I just need to just briefly talk about Robin.
Okay.
I didn't get a good vibe.
Okay. Neither. People always got weird vibes off Robin and didn't know why she had to be included.
Yes. Robin was, of course, Dr. Phillips' wife. And she was always there. And when they walked out, they always held hands. But then they were always like sort of clickbaiting their divorce.
Yeah.
There'd always be a story in a women's magazine like, ooh, on the rocks. And he was like, marriage is hard. And I was like,
Why is Robin here?
why is Robin always here? And then he'd be like, look, crazy family, narcissist, ghost in toilet.
Look, here's my Robin.
And then he'd be like, my son wrote a book. Remember this? And he'd
Yes.
get like his whole perfect family on the show and just be like, I have a perfect family. She has a heroin addiction. It was just like, it didn't feel relevant.
Yeah, okay.
I think Dr. Phil thinks he's better than everyone else.
All right. And do you think that fosters down into the toxic workplace?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Like, I feel like when Robin walked in the room, everyone had to stand up.
Yeah. Even though it's like, what are you doing?
You don't even work here. Did you know, on Robin, did you know that he has an ex-wife who he cheated on?
Yeah. I know that. And
Do you-
apparently he was quite controlling.
Do you think he cheated on her with Robin?
Okay. I didn't bring that to the council courtroom because I thought it was petty, but yeah, you probably did.
Yeah, I think he did. Robin has that vibe.
Anyway, there was an interesting point made in the Hollywood Reporter that said the Dr. Phil show will withstand all these toxic workplace claims because Dr. Phil never claimed
To be a good person.
to be nice like Ellen. He is a Texan straight shooter. He's here for the uncomfortable truth.
Tough Texan.
Exactly. So I don't think the show will be cancelled, although all of those things are horrible.
Agree.
Dr. Phil's other creations. Jessie, you know the show The Doctors?
Yes.
It's Dr. Phil's fault in that he created it.
I used to love that show.
Remember the
Who
main
needs
guy?
to go to the doctor when you can watch 5 fake doctors talk about why you have IBS?
It was so great.
They loved bowel issues, and they'd always get a middle-aged woman who had, it was always middle-aged women with health anxiety. It was always about weight.
They did weird experiments and stuff on
Yeah.
the stage as well.
Was it similar to Dr. Oz in that they'd be like, get inside this vagina, and they'd
Yeah.
have like a blow-up vagina, and they'd be like, that's your
And they
fallopian
try and
tube.
make it like fun and light.
Yeah.
But it's like this is
We're adults.
human,
like, yeah.
human beings' health and well-being. A 2014 study of that show looked at all the episodes thus far and determined that only 63% of what they said could be proven as credible.
That's
A lot of medical misinformation going on the doctors. Because you know what? Medicine rather dry. Rather
Yes.
dry,
Yes.
rather nuanced. So that was one of Dr. Phil's terrible creations. The other one I want to talk about is his failed diet plan.
So if you were someone in the 90s or the early thousands who had any sort of profile, you needed a side hustle in which you called people fat.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming this was his?
Yes.
Okay.
So in 2003, he started his second season with 13 overweight participants on a weight loss journey. That's the kind of idea that led to certain shows as The Biggest Loser. And there were lots of other people following along at home on his website, and he had an accompanying book, The Ultimate Weight Loss Solution.
I read one of Dr. Phil's books once. The man can't write. He cannot write. It was full of his, like, Dr. Philisms.
I don't think he would have written it. In
His
his
name
defense,
on the cover.
In his defense, he would not have written it. The weight loss book topped bestseller lists.
Of course it did.
And at the same time, he was lending his name and image to Shape Up, which was a line of nutritional supplements that included meal replacement drinks, power bars, vitamin packets, and these like pills. Apparently, he asked his good friend Oprah whether he should do it, and she was like, no, not really, and he did it anyway.
Okay.
People at the time said it was uncomfortable because he did have doctor in his title, but he wasn't a physician. So it was misleading that it's like Dr. Phil endorses this health intervention.
I mean, it's confusing in a few ways because it's like Dr. Phil, a doctor in rheumatoid arthritis in the early 90s, is also a psychologist who specialises in
Everything.
possessed teens and heroin-addicted puppies.
Yeah.
Is also claiming to be a weight loss doctor.
Specialist.
It is confusing when you get down to what his qualifications really were.
Yes. The plan called for 22 pills daily at $120 a month. But a lawsuit was filed the following year by 3 customers who accused Dr. Phil of false advertising. The company who was making Shape Up agreed to stop making the supplements, and it was settled for $10.5 million. Dr. Phil didn't have to admit any wrongdoing, but according to the label, the pills contained scientifically researched levels of ingredients that can help you change your behaviour to take control of your weight.
That's
And
a
I
lot
just
of-
have a note, that wasn't true, Philip.
It wasn't true.
Wasn't Philip? Was that
Philip.
true? Or did we stick our face on something that was a bit silly?
You've dropped the doctor.
Yeah.
You're just calling him Philip McGraw
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And you know it's bad when the company says, fine, we won't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Actually, we'll stop manufacturing.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
What was in that? What was...
Nothing.
You're gonna stop manufacturing?
Nothing that helped people lose weight. Jesse, it's time for charges and sentences. Jesse, what's your first charge?
My first charge is not... This is for Philip McGraw,
Yeah.
who I've de-doctored him as well. Not affording people on his show dignity. Like, for example, when they are having a psychotic episode and Dr. Phil / his producers zoom in on like a twitching eye.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not dignified.
Not a lot of dignity, no.
My sentence. I want Philip McGraw to be filmed at various moments devoid of dignity.
Oh, okay.
So I had to think about the most undignified moments
okay.
that exist.
Yep.
Say you're in a public toilet, no toilet paper.
And you've bent over and you're looking for toilet paper.
You're looking for toilet paper and you think there's no one else in here now. There could be the second I come out here with my pants around my ankles. I'm going to go look next door to see if there's some.
Okay.
And you do a waddle. And you...
Pants around the ankles.
Yes. And there's... If you pull them up, you're going to do a little drip.
Yeah.
So you're waddling and you're dripping, right? That's what I want to see of Dr. Phil.
Okay.
I want Dr. Phil to be filmed running for a bus that he misses while everyone on the bus watches
Okay.
with blank expressions.
It's embarrassing.
I want Dr. Phil to be filmed calling his dog in a dog park and his dog walks the other way. Can't hear. Looks at him. It's not like the dog has a hearing
no,
issue.
No.
I hear you, owner Philip. I'll be running across the road right now and stopping traffic.
Okay.
I want to see Dr. Phil buy an ice cream, drop it on his foot.
Embarrassing.
Okay.
How embarrassing.
I want a compilation of undignified Philip McGraw moments.
All right. That would help make up for what he's done to other people. I agree. That's great charge and sentence.
Thank you.
My charge.
I think he should slip on an escalator in the wet.
And hit his head on the corner.
I don't want him to hurt himself. He's a 71-year-old man. A fall could be serious, Claire. He's going to hurt his hip.
Okay, my charge is being misleading in so many different ways. Being misleading with what he calls himself. Being misleading with his weight loss product.
Yeah.
Being misleading with everything he does on his show. My sentence is this. He only gets to talk to people about rheumatoid arthritis. If you have rheumatoid arthritis, you can go on the show. He'll provide you with some personalised advice. He can't prescribe medication.
No.
That's not in his qualifications.
And it's only relevant circa 1990.
Yeah. No. There's been a body of research he cannot access because he has not looked at it. But that is his specialty. Mixed with a little
Interesting.
bit of forensic psychology.
Because the thing about rheumatoid arthritis, I respect it as an illness. Is it interesting? No.
No.
It's not an interesting illness because I think it's to do with joints and pain.
You also can't see it.
No.
Do you know what? It's very much my hand hurts.
Yes, and it also requires a series of tests to get there. So you come on and you go, I've got a sore knee. Well, have you slipped? Yes. Well, it's not rheumatoid arthritis. And then you come on, I've got a sore ankle. Well,
I can see a bruise.
yes, let's try orthotics for 6 months. Like it's a really boring process to determine that you've got it.
Yeah. So I think it's got to be called Dr. Phil, in brackets, rheumatoid arthritis specialist, crossed out, general knowledge person.
Okay, good idea. My second charge, yelling at sick people to get better. Mm-hmm. If you think about it, that's actually the underlying issue of everything he's done.
Yes.
Is that he gets people on who have addiction issues, mental health issues, eating disorders, and he yells at them to get it together. You got to change.
This is a changing day in your life. That's the beginning of the
Yes,
show.
and that's why our nan used to say, that man makes a lot of sense.
He speaks sense.
He
does.
speaks sense,
Yep.
she would say.
Yep.
Now, this is my sentence. Next time Philip has a sore throat, a headache, maybe a pain in his left arm, heaviness in a chest, heart beating very fast,
Sounds like a heart attack.
I want the doctor to say, in life you have 3 options with any situation that is a challenge. Remove yourself from the situation, change it, or accept it.
Okay, and so he's saying,
I think
can't-
I'm having a heart attack.
yeah.
I'm actually having a heart attack. And the
Yeah.
doctor's saying, if what you're doing isn't working, then change it. I'm having a stroke. Mm-hmm. I can't see. Mm-hmm. I don't know where I am. I have a
right.
headache behind my left eye.
Okay. Yeah, because that's what the people on his show have probably wanted to say.
Yep. Can I just add another quote by Dr. Phil
Yes.
that really sums him up that I came across? A lot of people do have tragic childhoods, but you know what? Get over it. What?
Oh, okay.
Tell that to someone who was like, who's a refugee.
I don't think psychologists are meant to say get over it.
No. Well, he wouldn't know.
No, because he's...
He doesn't have access to that kind of expertise.
He doesn't have his
Do you have any other
license.
charges, Claire?
Yes, my final charge is this. Broadly exploiting people. My sentence is a bit more nuanced because, Jess, something I didn't know about Dr. Phil is there has been a large-scale research study that showed that people who watched the Dr. Phil show were more likely to actually seek psychological help in their lives for their issues.
Aww.
It gave them that idea. They said, I should get help. Is that what a psychologist is? I'll see one of those.
He seems like a nice, straight shooting Texan.
Yeah.
He'll sort me out.
It normalised, it has gone a long way towards normalising mental health issues and normalising getting
Therapy.
help. Yeah. What I will say is that Dr. Phil makes $60 to $90 million a year.
It's a lot. Have you seen pictures of his home online?
Yeah, it's really eccentric. Like House of Gucci.
Yeah, like Cara Delevingne's house.
Yeah, which is surprising. But I think if he makes $60 million a year, I think he should start a fund for people who actually want to seek real mental health care with real psychologists.
But real psychologists are really disappointing because they don't have one-liners that will fix it.
But they can actually help, unlike Dr. Phil.
Yeah, but sometimes it takes like 10 sessions.
Well, that's why he's going to use his money to help. So if he makes $60 million in a year, he's going to use $59 million of it to put in a fund to actually help Americans with actual mental health care because there would be so many people watching that show who could not afford any kind of care themselves. So I think he actually has to do something to help mental health broadly.
Very valid. Before we wrap up, Claire, final statements on Robin.
Hair was always blow-dried immaculately.
Yep.
She had clearly had work done before it was mainstream to have work done.
You know, she's denied it. She says she's had nothing done.
Oh, shut up, Robin. Robin.
Should we do a special ep on Rob? Because I don't know what she did for the rest of the day.
No.
She just watched her husband do fake therapy and then walked out holding his hand and everyone clapped. And I was like, no offense, but what did Robin do today?
Hey, what if-
like he pretended to be a doctor.
That was hard. What if you went to a psychologist? So I sit with the psychologist for an hour and then at the end, their spouse comes in, holds their hand and they walk out and I'm meant to clap. It's like, congratulations on your heterosexual monogamous relationship.
On being married. Congratulations, Philip McGraw.
Yeah.
Oh, I think they have a terrible time when it's just them.
Okay. Thank you for listening to Cancelled. As always, go to the Twins' Thoughts on Instagram because we put up all the evidence. So we will put up Kashmir Sai, how about that?
I'll put up some pictures of his home because if that is an indication of he's in a mental state, well, goodness gracious, that man needs 10 sessions.
We'll do some footage of Robin stealing the spotlight.
And send us some defences of Robin. We don't think we're being kind, but that's our own neuroses, I suppose.
Yes. And if you enjoyed today's episode, leave us a nice review. That's always sweet.
This episode of Cancelled was produced by Rose Kerr,
And we will talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.